So I'm Jo Dunbar, and what you're looking at on the screen is my herbal apothecary. I live in the South Downs National Park. Before this, I had two herbal apothecaries, one in London and one in Surrey, but I closed them down and I live now in a really tiny little cottage in the hills in the South Downs. And the things I've studied and what I've become really crystallized into that book, The Secrets from a Herbalist Garden. So I've been a medical herbalist since 1999, as Carl said. I'm also a modern day Druid and a member of the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids, which I believe is the largest Druid order in the world. I originally studied as a horticulturist. I'm also a hypnotherapist, and of course, I'm an author. So I've written this book. This is my fourth book. And the reason I wrote this book is because I have a lot of patients. And of course, I go away on holiday. And when I go away on holiday, almost invariably, people phone me up and they say, "Oh, Jo, my son's got a cough, or I've got COVID, or I've got a tummy bug or something, some problem, but I'll be away for 2 weeks." And I say to them, "I can't send you the herbs because I'm in the mountains somewhere. So let's just think about what's in your kitchen cupboard." So we go through their kitchen cupboard or their garden, and I come up with certain herbs and I tell them how to make them so that they can make their own herbal medicines. And quite often by the time I get back here, they're better and they don't need me to send them any further herbs. So the point is that these kitchen herbal remedies and the weeds from your garden and the plants in the hedgerow, they're very powerful medicines, but largely forgotten by much of the population. However, it is a resurging interest, especially since COVID. People really turn towards nature again. I wrote this book because I wanted to re-empower people. A lot of the power for our healthcare has gone into the drugs industry. But not that long ago, in our grandparents' time, they used to use onions and potatoes and thyme and parsley, sage, to make people better and to keep you well as well. And the point of this book is to show you herbs which are freely available and easily available, that you can use to look after your health and the health of your children and your family. As an example, during the World Wars, and I'm sure plenty of you who are listening, or perhaps your parents, will remember that children were sent out into the hedgerows and they were paid a little bit of money, and they collected the rose hips, and that was turned into rose hip syrup, which was full of vitamin C, and it kept the kids really healthy during the wartime. So, considering if you have a chest infection and you're not able to get an appointment with your doctor for 2 or 3 weeks, what are you supposed to do? But there are plants in your kitchen cupboard and in your garden which are really powerfully antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal, as well as being able to enhance your immune system, expectorate the phlegm in your chest, soothe the sore throat, and many, many other things that herbs can do. So I wrote this book as if I'm with you, as if I'm holding your hand, because when I'm away, in a way, that's sort of what I'm doing. I'm talking to my patient, I'm explaining this is what you have to do. If you need to, give me a ring tomorrow and we'll take it further than that. But just as an example, the sort of things I might suggest would be, I would be discussing healing foods. For instance, porridge oats. And porridge oats are rich in vitamin B, and they help to raise our melatonin levels. They are what we would call a relaxing nervous tropho restorative. That means that it relaxes your nervous system and it restores and heals your nervous system. That allows you to have a lovely, deep, comfortable sleep, a restorative sleep, and wake up feeling energized and strong and ready to take on the day. There are other herbs such as pineapple, raw pineapple, which is rich in an enzyme known as bromelain. And this bromelain acts as a digestive enzyme. So it can be used for people who are having difficulty digesting, or perhaps they've got scar tissue. And in fact, I remember one woman who had really thick calluses on her feet, huge big calluses. And I suggested to her that she got raw pineapple and pushed it against her foot every night and just pulled a sock over it. I know it sounds weird, but the enzymes in the pineapple slowly and gently ate away those thick calluses, and then she'd rub it down with a pumice stone, and soon she had lovely smooth feet again. In my book, I also talk about lifestyle advice and herbal remedies and foods as medicine. So the point of it is I want to inspire you to use plants and food as medicine, and in doing so, to start watching the hedgerows, going out into the hedgerows, collecting the plants, and forming a relationship with the plants and falling in love with the plants. And then you start to fall in love with the earth. And when you start to fall in love with the earth, you start to take care of the earth. And there's another part of this book where I discover all these fascinating interesting subjects like biophotons, which I can tell you about a little bit later. So yeah, so just as an example, there are many plants and they do many things, but just as an example, they can do the following. So there are calming herbs which can help to calm you, but they don't dull the senses. So quite often when the patient wants something to help them sleep, or if they're feeling very anxious, then I'll say, well, I suggest you have this herb, and this herb. And they say, oh, I don't want to be dulled down. But the herbs don't dull you down. They just calm you down. And I can remember a gentleman who I still send herbs to. He used to keep this little bottle of herbs in his pocket because he had a high profile job and he had to do presentations. And he found that when he took the herbs, he was calm and able to really present well, because he was calm and focused. So I say to people, when you're a bit of a headless chicken and you're doing this and you're doing that and nothing's getting done, you take the herbs and you calm down, you get one job done, the next job done, the next job done. And herbs are very powerful in their antiviral properties, where they can prevent the replication of the virus and also prevent the virus from penetrating into our cells and then replicating and producing millions of other little viruses which do the same. Herbs can be immune boosting and also immune modulating, and that's really important, because if you have a viral infection and you take certain immune stimulants, the concern is that you might stimulate something called a cytokine storm, which is a sort of inflammatory storm. This is what happened with Spanish flu back in the early 1900s. It doesn't appear to have happened that much with COVID now, but I write about it in the book that there are some herbs, for instance, echinacea root and elderberries, which support the immune system, help to kill off the virus, but modulate the immune system so that you kill the virus, but you don't have that over-immune reaction. There are other herbs which help to restore stamina and resilience. And to my knowledge, there are no drugs that can do that, where they help to build up people who are tired, burnt out, fatigued, long COVID, for instance. The herbs can help us through our hormonal changes. So we can go through the menopause or through PMT far more comfortably than if we weren't using their very gracious help. And then the herbs can do incredible things. And the oak, I haven't written about it in my book, so I want to share it with you now, because I've only just discovered this. But there is a class of herbs known as adaptogens, and you can find them all over. You get the Korean ginseng from China, the Siberian ginseng from Russia, the Sutherlandia from South Africa, American ginseng from America, ashwagandha from India, shazandra from China. All these herbs are these herbs that build up strength and stamina. And I used to wonder, but where is the English adaptogen? Where is it? And of course, there it was. In plain sight is the oak tree, the symbol of strength and robustness and stability. But it's not in the bark, and it's not in the leaves, and it's not in the acorn. It's in the heartwood of the tree. And within the hardwood of the tree, there is a biochemical called roburin. And the roburins break down into urolithin A and urolithin B. And these urolithins do these incredible things. They go into our cells and they find the little organelle called the mitochondria. And this is where our energy is manufactured. But through oxidation and illness, these little mitochondria can become damaged and they're less efficient. And so we have less and less energy. So these urolithins take the mitochondria and they take them over to the lysosomes, which make me think of the dwarves, you know, and they break down the lysosomes, break down the mitochondria and reassemble them into perfect mitochondria, which then start to build up our strength and stamina again. It's amazing. And then the urolithin B, that helps to bring muscular strength again. It does it, but it doesn't use testosterone, which is really an interesting, maybe it's a new mechanism as well. I haven't had this mechanism before. Moving on to another slide. Herbs and spices that you will find for free. Yes, so in this book, I have only used herbs and spices that you will find for free, or pretty much for free. So plants that you will find in your kitchen cupboards or in your fridge or in your garden that grow as weeds or that grow as plants like thyme or parsley, or you might find them in the hedgerows. So you might find elderberries, elderflowers, ribwort, rose hips, slowberries. There's endless plants that I've listed in the book, easy to find. You probably, if you don't know them, it might be worth getting a little plant identification book, but it's fun. Looking up the plant, identifying them, and then I give you very clear recipes as to how to use these herbs to make you feel better. These are plants that our grandmothers would have used. You know, I grow about 35 to 40% of my own plants that I make all my own tinctures. The rest of my plants I have to import because, you know, I'm a professional medical herbalist, so I want as wide a variety of plants as I can to make people as well as I can, as quickly as I can. But these plants are imported, but our grandmothers back in the day, they didn't import their herbs. They simply used what there is, and what there is available for us is very, very effective and very easy to use and very, very good for our health. We've always done this. So this I consider it's traditionally women's work. And I say traditionally because there have been and are some excellent male medical herbalists. But by and by, I come from South Africa, so I often go into Africa on safari and I try and meet as many of the indigenous people as I can. And invariably the women are the herbalists. And it makes sense because they're the ones who would, you know, grow the plants or gather the plants. And so naturally, while they're gathering, you know, yams and berries, they will be gathering the medical things as well. And the same thing, as they were cooking the plants, they would be making medicines and they would be making beauty products for themselves as well as food. So it's fun, you know, going out and collecting the plants. In a way, we are rewilding ourselves. And I think this is an interesting concept because we all talk about rewilding the land. But if we rewild ourselves, we can't help but want to rewild the land, or at the very least, love and take care of the land. So, you know, when in this book, I follow the seasons and explain to you, this is what's out at this time, and this is how you can use it for this remedy or that remedy. And so what you'll find if you follow the book is that you're following the seasons, you're following the plants in the hedgerows, and then, you know, you're getting a little bit sunburnt, a little bit nettle stung, a little bit scratched, and your hair's getting tangled up in the hawthorns, but it's fun. You're rewilding yourself, and you're listening to the birds, and you're becoming more in tune with the plants, you're more in tune with the land, and you come back after an hour or two of collecting herbs and you feel fantastic. So the herbs that I describe in the book, you have to bear in mind that in the depths of winter, there aren't that many herbs. For instance, now, this is the 20th of October, I have all my herbs harvested and they're in. So I will explain to you that you need to store your herbs. So you might make an oil, or you might make what I call a forest floor pesto, and you can pop that in the freezer. Syrups, cordials, ointments, oxymels, which is a vinegar honey blend, which is really rather nice. But if you can imagine how lovely this is to do, you might have gone out and collected some berries. In this picture, you can see I've got rose hips there. And then, you know, when those autumn storms come in, I close my curtains, I light my fire, and then I start to, you know, start brewing my medicines. And the smell of the house is filled with these lovely herbal, tangy, fruity fragrances, and then you bottle them up, and they make wonderful medicines, and they also make really interesting, lovely Christmas gifts for people, especially people who've got everything. They haven't got what you can make. So yes, so again, I've said this before, and I'll just elaborate on that. We tend to get the same type of illnesses at the same time of the year. So I've divided the book into those chapters as we follow the year, but those illnesses often coincide with the plants which are performing in the hedgerows at that time of the year. And so I've learned to watch the hedgerow, and I call it the hedgerow clock, because I can see, even when I'm watching a film, I can see, oh, you know, elderflower is, so it's May, or elderberry, so it's late August. I can tell the time of the year. But what you find with the hedgerows is that they will provide what we need at that time of year. They will provide the plant. For instance, the elder. So in May, when the elder flower is out, that's almost invariably people have got the hay fever, you know, and their summer has been ruined because their nose is streaming, their throat's sore, their eyes are all sore. And in fact, elderflower is just the most brilliant herb for hay fever. There are other herbs which I've listed in the book, but I'll just give you an example of how good it is. So I once went to a wonderful day lecture at the Rewilding Museum here in West Sussex, and hay fever struck, and my nose was like a tap. It was just pouring, and it was awful. I went through all the tissues, and I couldn't concentrate on what the lady was talking about. And I thought, oh, look outside and see what there is. And there was, of course, the lovely elderflower. So I went out and I picked an inflorescence, and I ran up to the canteen. I asked them for a cup of boiling water, and I put the flower in the boiling water, and I cupped it, and I was inhaling the fragrant steam, which immediately soothed all my sinuses. And then as soon as it cooled down enough, I drank it, and just like that, all the pouring stopped. And then 2 hours later, the tap switched on again, and I went and got another flower, did the same thing, and it switched off again. It was an absolute lifesaver. But now later on in the year, in late August, early September, that's when the elderberries come out. And I've noticed this, that in the summertime, everyone goes off to Cornwall and Greece and France, and they come back and they're all as healthy as horses. The kids go back to school. Within a week, they're sick as dogs, all of them. I don't know where these viruses come from, but they do. So that's when you will want to have, you will have just collected your elderberries. And the elderberries are fantastic. They're packed full of vitamin C, and they're extremely powerful antivirals. They prevent the virus from penetrating into our cell and using our DNA or RNA to replicate itself. So you can make yourself lovely elderberry cordial and start to take that before the kids go back to school. Some of these remedies are very, very old. And it's interesting because they span millennia. And I'm going to give you an example how we're using the same herb for the same illness, but we just have a completely different context. So this plant is called, well, it used to be called 1,000 years ago, elfwort. So wort means plant, comes from the the Anglo-Saxon word wert. So you had a wert yard. So this is elf wert. And they believed that if you displeased the elves, bearing in mind that the elves are not small little things that we see them as, they were large and they weren't terribly well, they weren't terribly fond of humans at all. They really didn't care about us. And they might be quite nasty to us if we annoyed them. So people were always placating them and giving them gifts and putting up spells and talismans to keep them away. They didn't want the elves near them. But just say you've annoyed an elf, then what might happen is an elf might shoot you in the chest with an invisible elf arrow. And suddenly you'd feel the sharp pain in your chest and you'd have difficulty breathing. And your life force would hemorrhage out of this wound in your chest, and you'd become weaker and weaker, and you'd feel very breathless. And in order for your body to save you, it would have to generate life force. So it would generate life force from the base of your spine, and it would travel up like molten lava into your head. So you would have this hot, burning head. And then, if you were lucky, the medicine person, man or woman, would come along and make you a medicine with elfwort, the antidote to this elf arrow, this elf shot. And they probably would do some incantations and spells and you'd get better. So today we would call that disease pleurisy. And of course, the molten lava which came up to your head was your fever. But we would still use this plant. We no longer call it elfwort, we now call it Inula helenium, or its common name is elecampane, and it's used to treat this condition. It's also used to treat another condition called flying venoms. I love this, flying venoms. It perfectly describes a virus, because we've never seen a virus, really. None of us have seen a virus. We're just told that we've got these viruses, but they come in and they sort of poison us, or we feel so awfully ill. And these plants are used to throw off the flying venoms. Same plant, same illness, just different context, different words. You'll also find that hidden in the plants, I love this, squirreled away amongst the leaves, are the stories of our past, many stories. I try to tell you about some of them in the book, but one of them is called the 4 thieves, vinegar. That's a remedy I describe there. So during the Black Death in the 17th century, there were 4 thieves, and they used to go into the houses. If you came into contact with someone with this illness, it was a death sentence, you were dead. But these people were able, these 4 thieves were able to go into the houses of the dead and dying and rob them with impunity and come out, and they became quite wealthy. Of course, ultimately they were caught and they were going to have a ghastly death, but a deal was struck that they would have an easier death. So it would just be death by hanging if they gave their remedy, which they did. And that remedy was used for hundreds of years, essentially as an antiviral. And I give the recipe in my book, the Secrets from a Herbalist Garden. And during the coronavirus pandemic, many people made this recipe and they kept it in their cars, in their handbags, they spritzed it on their shopping trolleys, and it was a natural antiviral and it smelled nice. Some people put it in vinegar, some people put it in alcohol. One of my friends told me she puts it in vinegar and she smelled like a chip. I think, I'm sure she didn't smell like a chip, or if she did, a very fragrant chip. So yes, I was going to tell you about biophotons. So every now and then I come up with these fascinating nuggets of information, which I just can't resist telling you about. And there are quite a few of them in the book, but one of them is about biophotons, which I'm going to tell you about now, because what is so interesting is to look at our spiritual life and look at science. And when they come together, it just, I don't know, I suppose we're a science-based public, so we believe it all the more. But we do know how we're told we're the light and all that. Well, it turns out we actually are the light. And in our DNA, when our DNA contracts, and apparently it happens 100,000 times a second. So every time our DNA contracts, it emits a little photon of light, so small we can't see it. It's about 1,000 times smaller than our visual field, so we can't see it. But this little biophoton contains all the information in that DNA. And then it takes that information and at the speed of light shares it with all the other biophotons, so that every DNA in our bodies is sharing information at the speed of light. But not only that, but we have this light photon, these biophotons, we have a biophoton field. And so without realizing it, in our invisible field of light, we are sharing information with people. Now, what's so interesting is that certain scientists back in the 1900s, Dr. Pop, he discovered that there is a coherence in biophotons, and when cells are unwell, for instance, like a cancer cell, the light vibration, it becomes incoherent, so chaotic. But he then discovered that certain plants have high levels of biophotons. For instance, the mistletoe has a high level of biphoton coherence. And as herbalists, we use mistletoe for cancer to support people with cancer. Now, what he discovered is that if you give people mistletoe, the coherence of the biophoton in that plant is able to imprint on the person and restore the chaotic resonance to a coherent resonance, and so the people got better. What was recently found out, and this is how I got onto biophotons, is that plants like nettles and blackberries and dandelions are rich in biophotons, and so they can help to bring our light back into coherence and back into health. So there's another thing that influences the biophotons, which is very interesting, and that's intention. And they found that if we think light, our biophotons increase. And they believe that that's how healing between two people who are separate occurs, because it happens through the biophoton light. I don't know if that's true or not, but perhaps it is. And one of the things I've been wondering is this, is that certain plants, like hawthorn, for instance, has an affinity for the heart. Now, it is possible, I'm not sure if this is true, it's just a theory that I have, that possibly the biophoton resonance of our heart and of the hawthorn might be similar, and perhaps the hawthorn has the perfect, shall we say, blueprint. And when our hearts are dysregulated, if we take the hawthorn, perhaps it imprints onto our biophoton, so the plant biophoton imprints onto our biophoton, restores the coherence, and then perhaps it brings health to the person. And yes, I know that hawthorn, for instance, has bioflavonoids and that it's able to bring down blood pressure. That's a biochemical. This is another one. This is more a lighter vibrational signature. And why shouldn't both be working at the same time? So my last slide, and that's me against a tree. In the last chapter, I talk about from ecotherapy to ecophilia. So we know right now that our species, our race, has unfortunately, much to the sadness of many, we've divorced from nature. We're disconnected. We're not like, like the indigenous tribes of Africa or New Guinea or South America. We're not like those. We don't live off the land. We live separately from the land. But it has brought depression, anxiety, and I would suggest a degree of heartache for us as well. It's got a term, it's called nature deficit disorder. And coming home to nature, coming back to the earth, brings people so much joy. It's the kind of joy that you can't buy. It's just there. It's for free and it's wonderful. There are many paths back to falling in love with the earth. Herbal medicine is one path, only one path, but it's an easy path, because all you have to do is step outside, look at what's growing, collect these herbs, make these little remedies, take them, share them. And so, by doing this, we engage with the seasons, and we engage with the plants, and we engage with what's blossoming or fruiting at that time of the year. And then, you know, by just being out in nature, that itself, you know, we're getting all these negative ions, we're hearing the woodpeckers and the owls, you know, it's just so exciting. We're rewilding ourselves, so we're coming home, you know, to the earth. And then we come home to our kitchens. We bring that wildness back into our homes and back into our hearts. And we start to stir like our grandmothers did. And maybe if you're in that sort of mindset, you might, you know, as you're stirring, you might be gently thinking about what you want to do for your future. You might be scrying a little if you want to, but you're slowing down, you're coming back to your own heart, back to that which you love. And you can start to manifest a whole different way of living, perhaps one that you hope to achieve for your near future. So in doing so, we fall in love with Mother Nature, we fall in love with the earth, with our home, and we do that through the love of plants. To go out and collect, there's not much left now, but what people could do, there are rose hips, and the rose hips are, you know, they're the ones that are rich in vitamin C, and so they're really helpful to make a tonic, as a little vitamin boost that you can take. The vitamin C is interesting because it also forms collagen, and rose hips have been used for arthritis as well. So I don't know what the age of the viewers, but sometimes people find as they get older with the creaky joints that it's worse in the winter time. So you could go out and collect some rose hips, and then you can make I made a wonderful vinegar with rose hips, ginger, which is warming the joints and anti-inflammatory as well. And I put in some cinnamon and cloves. Now, that's going to serve as a really great immune tonic, but as an aside, it will also help the person's, you know, help the person's joints, because as the winter comes in, it feels like the cold gets into your, the damp gets into your joints, and the ginger is anti-inflammatory and drives the damp out. It's anti-inflammatory and it's warming, but then you've also got that lovely vitamin C, and actually it tastes really delicious. It tasted like a Christmas punch. It was so nice. Lyme's disease is a very difficult condition because it's not only the Borrelia, but you've got all the co-infections as well. So yeah, I mean, cinnamon. Sorry, I've got something. Herbs like cinnamon are very powerful antimicrobials, and so are cloves as well. Those can be treated, but the Lyme disease itself, I think that's one where you would do better to see a practitioner, because it is a difficult condition. Really, what you need to do is strengthen the immune system, strengthen the body to be able to throw off, if possible, this spirochete. But the problem with that spirochete is it's so sneaky. The minute you start fighting it, it forms a little cyst and it hides away. So I think probably the best is to strengthen your immune system and yourself as much as you possibly can. So there, at this time of the year, perhaps you'll start off with the rose hips, perhaps rose hips and elderberries. Yeah, in the book I talk about chickweed. Chickweed's such a lovely little plant. It looks like moss, and you quite often find it on compost heaps or just growing as a weed in your garden. Where I live up in the hills, it seems to like growing where the cows are, and I have to climb up really high up into the hills in the summer, and usually my cheeks are, I'm hot, and I want to just put my head down on a cushion of chickweed, it's got that effect. It's cool and moist and soothing. So in my book, I teach you how to collect the chickweed and to make a cream. And when I had my apothecaries in London, I had lots of little kids with eczema, and chickweed was one of the best sellers, really. If you can't get chickweed, what you could try as just a home herbal remedy. I mean, chickweed is a home herbal remedy, and you can easily go and get it. But right now, you could try to get a chamomile tea bag and drop it in a cup of boiling water, and leave it for just a minute. Take it out and squeeze it dry, and put it in the fridge, and then press it on your elbow as a poultice. So just press it gently on the elbow, and it should really soothe and take down that inflammation. And then you put a neutral cream on, not a fragrant cream at all, but something that is just like a base cream, really, and a nice thick emollient base cream. So you can try that and see if that works for you. Borrelia, yeah. Well, the enzymes are what we often use for Borrelia. For biofilm. So raw pineapple, raw papaya, but then also it's the arctium, which is the burdock. Burdock apparently helps to break down the biofilm, burdock leaf. But like I said, the Borrelia, it's a very difficult condition to treat. But give it a go. You can try burdock leaf tincture, a little bit, because it's a detox. So you don't want to overwhelm the body with too much toxicity. So if you're going to take burdock leaf, it's an antibiotic and a detox herb. You'd use, take it with dandelion root as well, so that you're helping the liver to cleanse, and then just a little bit of the burdock leaf, so that you slowly start to do, you don't want to overwhelm with too much detoxing, and that should hopefully help to break down the biofilm. Thyme and sage are really helpful. If the person has a very oily skin, then sage is really helpful. And quite honestly, I find actually topicals work really well. So if the person made a sage tea, strong sage tea, and then you dip a cotton wool ball in there and just wipe over there, the sage helps to dry up the excess sebum, but it's also naturally estrogenic, so that helps to bring down the testosterone, which generates the sebum, but it's also a natural antibiotic, so it helps to clear away the spots of the acne. So that would be a good start. Another herb that's also helpful, if you perhaps you don't have an oily skin, maybe you have a dry skin, then perhaps you could try the thyme in the same manner. Fresh thyme or just dried kitchen thyme, say a teaspoon per cup of boiling water. Put a lid on, because you want to keep the essential oils in the water, not evaporating out. And so you would put a teaspoon in a cup of boiling water, put a saucer on top, leave it till it cools down, then strain that out. And then you can use that water again to wipe over your face, and then use a light moisturizer to cover that. Yeah, actually, there's a big difference. It's really interesting, because plants have chemicals. We call them constituents. So they're biological chemicals, and within each plant there are hundreds and possibly even thousands of these constituents. And with each season and each crop and each different field, the constituents change just a little. Now, normal antibiotics, it's one chemical, one synthetic chemical. So the bacteria are very, very clever, and they quickly learn how to just pump it out or become resistant. So hence we've got, MRSA and these bacterial resistant, antibiotic resistant bacteria. But with the plants, they can't become resistant, because there's so many chemicals all having antibiotic actions, plus the one constituent might be high this year and another constituent that year. And so the bacteria, or shall we say, the plant is always one step ahead of the bacteria. And I'll give you an example. Myrrh. Myrrh was used to preserve the mummies 5,000 years ago in Egypt. And myrrh is still my strongest antibacterial herb. It's not my only one. There are other fantastic ones, you know, garlic, wild garlic, thyme, clove, cinnamon, and they've got many different mechanisms of action. But myrrh is a very powerful antibiotic. And 5,000 years ago, it's 5,000 years later, it's still as effective as it was back then. Okay, yeah, there are. And there are quite a few. So with osteoarthritis, you've got wear and tear. So that means you've got your two articulating bones, and they're covered in cartilage. But over time, cartilage has got worn away, and so now you've got bone on bone. It's very painful. So what you need to do is repair the cartilage and take down the inflammation as well. So one of the ways you can repair the cartilage is by either using bone broth, that's assuming you're not a vegetarian, because if you're vegan or vegetarian, you can't go down that route. But I'm assuming you're not. You can either use bone broth, and it provides collagen to start to repair this. But making a bone broth every day can be a bit of hard work. So what I do for myself is I just take a teaspoon of gelatin and I mix it in with hot chocolate. I make my own hot chocolate without sugar, etc. And it just disappears. You don't taste it, but I'm getting that collagen in. Then there are anti-inflammatory herbs. There's willow bark. Now, it's awkward. You're not going to go to a willow tree and strip off the bark, but you can take the twiglets and strip the twiglets and make a tea. And in fact, I knew a lady who had a dog, an arthritic dog, and whenever she used to prune her willow tree, the dog used to run forward and grab a branch and gnaw on the branch. And slowly she put two and two together and realized that the dog was enjoying the salicylates from the willow. Now, the salicylates is what makes up aspirin. It's an anti-inflammatory. So the dog was self-medicating. So we can use just the bark from little willow twigs, or you can collect meadowsweet as well. But there's another plant which is really interesting, because as a professional herbalist, I might use a plant called devil's claw, and its botanical name is Harpagophytum procumbens. Now, within Harpagophytum are these constituents called harpagosides, and these are the bits that make it brilliantly anti-inflammatory. The problem with this plant, well, the interesting thing about this plant is it looks like a gnarly old hand. It's interesting, it looks just like that. It grows in the desert in Namibia, and of course it's massively popular. It's hugely popular in Germany, so it's endangered. So now we have, growing as a weed, a plant called scrofularia, which is also known as figwort. It's a very common weed, and it's got a really smelly, funny smelly smell. But within this figwort, which doesn't look anything like Harpagophytum or devil's claw, are these harpagosides. Amazing. They're just growing here, easily able, we can easily grow them and harvest them. I've got them in my herb garden, and you can use that to help with the arthritis. However, actually, having said that, it would taste horrible. So let me think. I think your best bet would be meadowsweet flowers. Remember what I said about the rose hips, because of the collagen, helps to reform the collagen. And then also gelatin, so that can help you. So anti-inflammatory and restoring the collagen. And it's a long, slow process. The other thing that's really helpful is apple cider vinegar. So you could extract your meadowsweet in apple cider vinegar. And why don't you make meadowsweet and rosehip apple cider vinegar? You can read it in my book. And then you don't take the vinegar neat, it's too strong. You take a teaspoon of that vinegar in a cup of water and you drink it like that. It's very, very pleasant. And then if you want to, you can use the gelatin as well. It's made a huge difference. I give it to my partner he was actually on morphine for the pain, so much pain in his knee. And we do something very similarly. and he's almost got no pain at all. And he was he was taking morphine 4 times a day. He was in that much pain. It's very effective. Oh, sorry, one other thing. Sorry, of course, yeah, thank you. Turmeric and ginger. And again, in my book, I talk about, I give you lovely recipes of turmeric chai, turmeric, like a latte, turmeric latte. So you could have the turmeric latte, etc. at night, and you could have the meadowsweet vinegar in the morning. And all these things, slowly over time, they help you to feel so much better. Well, Shakespeare told us, you see, he said rosemary for memory, but actually there's a whole class of medicines called nootropics. So when I describe the adaptogenics, those are, I'm just going to give you a bit more light here. Oops, is that, how is that better? Yeah, when I describe the adaptogenics, these give strength to the body, but now we also need strength for our brain. So we use these nootropics. And joyfully, chocolate is one of the nootropics. So is rosemary and sage as well. Sage is a fantastic herb for the memory. And another one, which may surprise you, is nettle seeds. And they come with a really fun story, actually. And the story is of a horse stealer. And I think it was set in Ireland. I don't know how true this is, but I think the story is a bit of an urban legend. It's everywhere. But so there's this horse stealer. He buys an old nag and he feeds it porridge and nettle seeds. And the horse looks splendid, beautiful glossy coat. And he takes it off to market. And then the horse is sold for a very good price. And then somebody buys the horse, takes it to the field, throws it out to graze, and it sort of reverts back into a bit of a nag. But a doctor from an old age residence heard the story, and he said to the nurse, you must put a tablespoon of nettle seeds on our patient's porridge every morning. Now, the story is that they became lusty. So interpret that how you like. But we do know that the nettle seeds contain omega-3s, which is very healthy for our brain. So I think it is used. We do use nettle seeds as a nootropic for the brain. So you could, now it's too late, but next year go out, collect your nettle seeds, and I explain in the book how to do it, and then put that over your porridge and eat that every day. But then also you can make yourself a sage tea, or in the book I also describe you can make like a little spice. You mix this various herbs and spices in a salt grinder, and you can grind it over your salt, and so you just have it slowly and incrementally in your food. Yeah, well, I mean, in Druidry, we've got the Wheel of the Year, which is the 8 festivals. So we've got the summer and the winter solstice, and then we've got the equinoxes, so the spring and the autumn equinoxes, and then in between there you've got Imbolc, Lughnasadh, Samhain, and what's the other one? Imbolc. Anyway, the other one, the fourth one, which I suddenly can't remember. But it's quite fun to follow the Wheel of the Year, because so now we're just leaving the autumn equinox energy. We're moving into Samhain energy, which is the time of we call it the time of the crone, or the Cailleach. She's the wise woman. She's the woman who knew everything or knows everything. And of course, it's the time when we get out our pots and we start stirring. And it's the time of the grandmothers who knew who was up to what. They know all that because they just sit quietly and observe. But of course, they know which medicines are right for which particular illnesses. And then as we move through the winter solstice and we come to Imbolc, and just then as the little green shoots are coming up, and then we get that, with all the herbage, we can start looking at birch, the cleansing of the birch, the tree of new beginnings. And we start looking at the detoxing herbs, which are coming up at that time of the year. And of course, Imbolc is related to the goddess Bridge or Bridget. She's the goddess of healing. And you often find the well of Bridget. She's these wells which were associated with cleansing and purity. And so again, at that time of the year, we're using those sorts of herbs, the detox, the cleansing, the birch waters to flush out ourselves. And so we can go through the year like that, Carl, you know, linking the Celtic wheel of the year with our way of life. You learn to look differently at the world. For instance, now in the autumn, people start fearing SAD, seasonal affective disorder. But what you can change the context. So you can say, well, we're about to go into Samhain. That's the time of the ancestors. It's a lovely time of year. It's really, I mean, spooky is what we call it now, but you get that shiver of excitement, you know, in the air, that there are other beings at large, especially in the forests and in the graveyards. But then we move into the winter solstice, and the winter solstice, that's the shortest day of the year. So after that, the winter solstice, every day the sun gets stronger and stronger and stronger. It's the rebirth of the sun god, as opposed to the Christian son of God. So the sun god, S-U-N, sun god, the rebirth. So from the 21st of December, we start getting brighter and brighter days. And so suddenly the winter doesn't seem so daunting at all, you know, because we know just as Christmas is coming, we've got all those festivity, instead of going into horrible, dark, cold winter, actually the days are getting longer and longer, and you start to feel a sense of hope rather than a sense of despair. Easy, because we're so lucky here in the UK. You know, I was amazed to discover that only, I think it's 2 or 4% of our land is covered in homes. So we've got lots and lots of green space. And in our cities, we've got lots of parks and along the river and countryside. It's not hard to get out and reconnect with nature. It's really not difficult at all to do that. We just have to look at it with different eyes. You know, sometimes I don't go to London very much anymore, but when I did, on the alleyways, you would see things like mugwort, for instance. She's Artemis, she's the goddess, the goddess of, you know, Artemisia, the goddess of love. And there she is, gracing the pavement of some horrible little alleyway. And you think, oh, there she is, this goddess of love, just in a little alleyway, looking beautiful in amongst all this litter and ugliness. She looks so beautiful. You know, that in itself, it's a sacred moment. It's a connection with the earth. As you're going up and down the motorways, you see the mallows and the lupins and, you know, all the other plants there, and you think, oh, you look so beautiful. Even the evening primrose on the motorways, it looks magnificent. You think, gosh, you look so beautiful standing there so magnificently, and amongst all this turbulence, you still look gorgeous, and it lifts your heart to see that. Well, first of all, I'm going to say, you know, try this book, because it's just it's a lovely gift to yourself, you know, to bring you back to nature. And then if this isn't enough for you, then by all means seek me out. If you look up on my website, botanicamedica.co.uk, and you can find me there. Otherwise, you know, don't think that the little home remedies are weak. They're not weak. They're really powerful. They really work. But if that's not enough for you, if you've got a more complicated condition, if you've got a chronic illness, that's when perhaps you can consider, oh, hello, Shakti. Hello, lovely. She's just put it up. Yeah, I know Shakti, she's lovely. Yeah, so if you've got a chronic illness or a more complicated, then by all means you can contact me. But otherwise, you know, don't sniff at what you grow, don't sniff at the weeds and your kitchen cupboards. They are really, really powerful. And these remedies, they really work. So I wish you all well, and I wish you great joy reconnecting with nature and with the plants. And don't forget to thank them. They like being thanked.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you.